All right, the Sort of Sports Podcast presents The Big Salad.
If it was a regular salad, I wouldn't have said anything. But you had to have that big salad!
On to episode 2, thank you, George. Hosted by the one and only Quinn Maseko.
Thank you, Ryan. Hello, friends. On tonight's podcast, we're flipping around for our review of the first 1.5 rounds of the NCAA men's tournament. Going to touch on some of the NCAA women's tournament as they opened up yesterday. The NFL with a couple free agency questions, the NBA, and then we'll finish off with happy time like usual. But we begin today with the NCAA women's tournament and the revelations of the disparities within workout rooms and fan gear for the women's basketball athletes compared to the men's basketball athletes. So, Ryan, what do you make of these disparities, and how would you critique the NCAA with their preparedness for both tournaments?
Well, before I answer that, I just wanted to ask you really quick. I forgot to ask you before we started, and I think it might be a good question for the podcast. How did you enjoy the week? I'm saying, you already did your first episode. Are you still enjoying preparing for the podcast? Were you excited going into this week?
Yes, I enjoyed last night. I was doing some it was this morning. I was doing some last minute schedule for today because I didn't know, it's so instantaneous right now with March Madness.
I know you and I have been texting each other a lot about basketball.
Yeah, yes, both sexes. It's been a little entertaining. I was flipping between 4 games last night and up till midnight again, and I'll be up till midnight again tonight because we got games on for both men's and women's. So, really enjoying it. Hope we get some more viewers out there. Hopefully this time there'll be less time more people will choose it. I think we just scared them away last time.
Yeah, I agree.
Being an hour and 25 minutes on here, but yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoy the conversation, and we're gonna keep it up.
All right, sounds good. I was just making sure. I wasn't holding you against your word.
No, you're never holding me against the wall. So I am not captive here, Chad Holt. If you're listening, not at all.
All right, so the real thing with the women's, and I was discussing this with some friends, with my girlfriend over the weekend, and it was like, it's just, I don't know what to say exactly. I don't know how to word this without sounding odd, but there is a truth to the matter that the NCAA does not make equal money off the women's and men's programs, and that's the reality. But I do think there's something to be said where that doesn't mean you can just say, well, we're going to throw more money at the men, because the NCAA, I don't think we want to get into the big, I think we should save that for another week, the argument of NCAA using college athletes as property, and if they should be allowed to profit off them, as we saw livers.
Writing this down for future podcasts, people.
Livers, wearing that shirt at the Michigan game saying not NCAA property. Michigan right now is probably the one seed that I think looks the best other than Gonzaga, but we can talk about that more later.
Right, we'll talk about that later.
There's a real thing there where it's like they make so much money already. They obviously have the bank to make the women's tournament as, I think what would the word be, big and important as the men's. They definitely have the funds to do it. And
what
I think
about marketable? You like that?
Marketable. I like marketable. And I'm saying they've got more, I think now more than ever, they have more marketable women. I mean, we're seeing, there's a lot of stuff, last year, there's been a lot of, social change stuff that's becoming very mainstream, and I think pushing the women right now I think would be a really in move for the NCAA, and I think people would really pay attention. And to be honest, I think Paige Beckers, she's the woman that you put, she's the LaMelo Ball or the Zion Williamson or the Fernando Tatis Jr., Patrick Mahomes, if you will, where she's the poster woman that you put on everything. I think she's got everything you probably want in a college female athlete. She's exciting to watch on a great team. Going to stay there for 4 years, is going to be a WNBA star. She's the total package, I think. And now we're getting a little bit of a different thing where it's about how marketable they can make it. But I'm saying, I mean, they have the money to do it. You might as well try it. And I mean, I think they just need to work towards, okay, instead of thinking we're not making as much money off them, okay, you should think, how do we make them as interesting or just more interesting than they already are, because they don't market it as well, I think. I watch a fraction. I basically only ever watch I'll maybe catch a couple I probably catch 3 games that aren't Final Four for women's, and then, I'll watch some of the Final Four, and I might not even watch the national championship. Whereas the men's, I spent my entire Saturday watching all their games. And I am not a sexist person at all. I like women's basketball. I think you like women's basketball more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But
I really enjoy women's basketball.
But I like women's basketball a lot, but I find myself more drawn to the men's basketball because I think the marketing, they market it better. Mm-hmm. And I think there's just more interesting storylines that they like to point out. And I think the women's needs to be marketed better. But there is a true issue, and I was thinking about this week. I know I'm telling you a lot of things at once, and I think you agree, and I'm going to ask you, pose this question. Is the women's less marketable partially because it's so powerhouse heavy? Because to me it feels like there's UConn, and then the tier below them of Baylor and South Carolina, and then NC State's kind of the weird team. There's always a random team that does really well, and then there's everybody else.
Right, you got Stanford.
There's UConn.
Well, Stanford.
Stanford's good, but
there. Tennessee's climbing out of their little hole right now, and I think it's a lot more. It's a good question.
Yeah,
it's a good question.
It's a lot more powerhouse heavy. They're the AFC, whereas the men's is the NFC. If you want to put it in NFL terms, like the NFC has always got like 8 really good teams, but the AFC always has like 2 or 3 that are better than everybody in the NFC.
Right.
Like the AFC this year had the Chiefs and the Bills, who were arguably the 2 best teams in football before the playoffs because the Bucs got really hot. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying the NFC had like 6 teams that I thought were really good, but none of them stood a chance against the Bills or the Chiefs. Yeah. Before we hit the playoffs and saw that Brady was going to carry the Bucs.
Right.
And Shaq Barrett was going to become a Defensive Player of the Year. So
I think personally it needs to be marketed more.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I'm going to use a double S phrase here, systemic sexism here with Title IX. It should not be, you look at the March Madness app, you look at the March Madness Twitter account.
I sent you over the weekend the women's app, and I said, hey, the women's app is nowhere near as cool, but we got to keep up with the women's.
Exactly.
And that's a little thing, but they don't put as much money into it.
Right, and that's one of those things where you see that the NCAA favors the men because they bring in the more money, which shouldn't matter because if you push the women,
they'll make more money.
Made it more marketable and said, hey, your commercial slots are up. All those costs. For the advertisements, all those kinds of things. This year is probably the first year in the last 7-8 years since I've really gotten into women's college basketball that there have been so many games on TV, and ESPN has expanded to using ABC, and it's been more
ESPNU.
All day. Yes, it's been all day on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, which is good because in the past it hasn't been like that. It has been, we're going to play the top teams, we're not going to play all the teams, which is wrong because if you compare it to men's they play every game on TV, and that's something that needs to be included in that fairness. And when I saw these social media posts, and they were mostly from the women's basketball athletes, I thought it was ridiculous and disappointing by the NCAA.
And just in general, what a bad look for the NCAA.
Right.
Like that. Like even if I'm a person who doesn't care about basketball, that looks bad.
It does.
That looks really bad on you. And I feel like there should have been somebody who says, hold up, guys, we're going to get in trouble here. Like, even just a logical perspective.
Right. And if you didn't see the pictures, hopefully we'll get them up on the screen for the podcast, possibly. You look at the men's side, there's 25 weightlifting benches. They each got their own set of weights. They got all these big machines. And in the women's, they got a set of dumbbells. And it's unjust, and it's unflappable. I guess I was kind of, when I saw those things, I was definitely filled with a rage that I just had no words for. And
how frustrating is that when I want to go back to Paige Beckers because I think she's really good and I really like watching her. Yeah. And when you're Paige Beckers and you're a huge deal, you've been recruited heavily since high school, you're the biggest name in women's basketball at the moment. I think she's probably a bigger name than maybe, Sue Bird might have her beat overall, but I'm saying...
But she's been in the
WNBA forever. But I'm saying, she's one of the biggest names along with, Maya Moore and Brianna Stewart, also UConn grads, oddly enough. But
well, we got Candace Parker still.
Candace Parker's good.
Tennessee.
Yeah, she's good. So. But I'm saying, you're one of the biggest names in women's basketball, definitely top 5.
Right.
Some people would argue top 10, but I think it's probably top 5.
Right.
And you're getting dumbbells. Whereas, not to be this way, but like, the dudes at North Texas have a nicer gym. Like, have a nicer workout. North Texas.
Right.
And UConn women's basketball.
Who's won 11 11 national titles. Going to hopefully go to their 13th straight Final Four. And they can't get the same weight machines as North Texas.
And that's nothing against North Texas, but like,
not.
it's North Texas.
Right. And they're at the bottom of the...
They're ranked 14th.
Exactly.
Granted, I mean 13th. But
Right.
congrats on the upset, North Texas.
Right. Yes, but it was a shame when I saw this, and I think the NCAA definitely has to come out. I haven't seen an official statement yet from them.
I think he said, I think...
the commissioner did?
The commissioner made a comment just about, like, we know we messed up.
Right.
I feel like that should have been a thing you recognized 2 weeks ago.
Right, exactly. I mean, you think about this. It's like, if you thought, realistically, you're on Amazon, and, I'm buying 10 weightlift benches, and you think, well, I got 10 for this side. I should definitely get 10 for the other side, but you know what? I just totally forgot to order 10 for them. It's just, I just don't understand the lapse. I think it has to be a reworking in the NCAA system, and it's got to be pushed more because women's basketball, I guess Cardington is their own microcosm of girls' sports.
Yeah.
Where it's just the epitome of North Central Ohio, and there's such a strong culture, I would say.
I think women's sports are arguably women's sports are like in Cardington are just as marketable, and softball is widely beloved. And I think more people care about softball than baseball in the general public.
Right.
Like if you're discounting parents and students,
right.
If you picked a random person out of Cardington who has no attachment to anything, they're going to go to a girls' softball game in Cardington more than a boys' baseball.
Right.
And that's nothing against the boys' team, but the girls' team is so good.
Right.
And I'm thinking, like, success breeds interest.
Right.
Whether that's positive or negative. Right. And Rick Pitino's negative. I was just kidding. But I'm saying, I think there's a real thing there where instead of just thinking, well, we don't make as much money off them, so who cares?
Right.
There should be we don't make as much money off them. Here's how we can.
Right.
Here's how we
right.
move towards making them equal both economically and socially.
Exactly.
And that's not, I'm not saying like in I'm saying for the NCAA.
Right.
Like if you need to market them to the point where you can make it.
Exactly.
It's on you.
They should have the same.
It's not like the girls are coming out and saying, guys, don't make our Final Four a big deal.
Right. I mean, and even like the simple fixes, like we mentioned, the technology and those kinds of things, it doesn't take that much to, set up the same app as the men. I mean, why can't it just be all one app and you can say,
I thought it was
the men's tournament,
I was shocked.
Here's the women's tournament, and that's that's just it's a simple fix, and I don't understand why it's such I mean, it's definitely it's fueling that systemic sexism kind of part, from my opinion, because you're not just giving equal treatment. It's simple.
Yeah, it's a real issue.
These things are just common sense fairness.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing is I understand you don't make as much money off them, but you need to figure out ways to make that not that way.
Exactly.
Because
there
I don't
think
think
there are too many top programs there that you cannot. People should know about.
I don't think the large majority of basketball fans are sexist. I don't think they're not. I think the large majority of basketball fans are like me, where they don't watch that much women's basketball as much as they watch men's, because they know all the men's teams. They can name everybody in the tournament. It's a bigger deal. Everybody likes it. I have a friend, really big women's rights supporter and all this stuff. He doesn't know very many of the women's teams because no one markets them.
Okay.
So, you know what? Like, they don't market them, yet, like, there's people that I know that are, like, really like women's basketball, but they don't even watch NCAA women's basketball because they don't want to catch a game.
Right.
Never on.
Former Notre Dame head coach Muffin McGraw always brought up, and now Don Staley's kind of taken on that speaking role as from the coaching perspective about those injustices. And it's the NCAA. It's a bad oversight. It's bad PR, and it's just utterly ridiculous in 2021 for this issue to be happening.
Especially within like all the like social and things we've talked about. Like, there's a lot of big topics that have been explored in the last couple years, especially. And I'm like, and you see a real move culturally for women's rights. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to pull out like one movie and say it said it, but I'm saying like the Wonder Woman movie was wildly successful, and it's arguably like DC's most profitable movie in the last couple of years. It was their highest grossing movie in the last couple of years, and it shows the majority of pop culture isn't sexist. So why is the NCAA treating the majority of pop culture like it is?
Right. And we can always argue about this, because you think about NCAA football. It's the biggest thing in the fall. And there are plenty of other sports, both men's and women's. We can talk about we got cross country, we got volleyball. You never hear anything about them, no matter, men's and women's cross.
I caught one period of a women's volleyball game. It was Kentucky, Tennessee. Heck of a game. College volleyball is like incredibly impressive,
right?
Because they're really good.
But we don't. But
it's never on.
Right, it's never pushed and it's never on. So those are those simple injustices where we'll put on Maction football because they got this exclusive deal on ESPN. Yet during the week we could have some a 1-2 or a top 5 matchup in women's volleyball in the fall, and it's just it's unfair. It's unfair.
And I understand that. Women's volleyball will never be anywhere near as big as a Michigan-Ohio State football game. But if you've got like 6 ESPN channels, and instead of running reruns, instead of rerunning that morning's episode of The Jump, put on a. Well, I'm saying they do that,
right? I know.
And then put on the volleyball game and market it,
right?
We'll get some commercials.
Exactly.
You can market on your own channel very easily because it's your own channel.
It's your channel. It's.
That's why we always see a tradition like no other on CBS.
Yes, exactly. I haven't seen that much, but anyway.
Hey, wait, hold up. Blatt, I have to say it. Jim Nance, did you hear him? He said, "It's been a tournament like no other." I was like, yes, go, Jim.
I did.
That's hilarious.
I did. But not to get too deep in the weeds here and to move on to our next topic, but I think we definitely summed it up as it was disappointing, it was frustrating,
and they gotta move
hopefully they get it together for next year.
It all just comes down to like marketing and like making.
You should be making the same marketing budget for both sides. It's just if you put it's a drastically number I'm going to throw out, but if you say we're going to do $1 million on the men's, we can't be putting $250,000 for the women's. It's got to be $1 million each, and that's what it needs to be. It needs to be same exact formats, those kinds of things.
Nixon would be crying.
Well, he didn't like Title IX, did he? Or the ERA. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. So, on to the NCAA men's tournament. We're talking about some of those revelations. Obviously, we're on the 4th day of that. Women's, we're going to touch on some. We'll talk more about that next week because it's only the 2nd day. We're only halfway through the 2nd day in the women's, so we'll talk more about what goes on there. And we'll talk about one subject from yesterday. But we're going to play a little game called What's the Word here? Talking about the upset that nobody saw coming. The Ramblers with Sister Jean over the Fighting Illini. So Ryan, Loyola Chicago's win over the Fighting Illini was blank.
Upsetting. Because we all know I love Illinois. They were my pride and joy. Didn't mean to make it rhyme, but here we are. And that didn't rhyme. Dang it, I ruined it. But it was upsetting for me. And here's my thing with Loyola Chicago, and you might debate this, but I don't think they're the crowd favorite anymore that they once were. Because I think they've been taken over by a little somebody named Oral Roberts. I think people are rooting for Oral Roberts now, especially after they got that big win over Florida, 3-point win, and both their wins being 3-point wins. I think it's really interesting. I like how, and we're going to get deeper into this when we talk about the tournament, because there was so much conference play this year, there's been a lot more upsets because it's been hard to rank teams, and I think the rankings were really off this year, and I'm not going to be like, the NCAA ranking system sucks. Well, no, it was really hard to tell this year.
Right. And it's the media, too, that ranks. It's media and
coaches.
So,
I don't blame them for that at all, and to be honest, I think it makes things more interesting, and I'm saying, I just really hope a 1 seed doesn't win, because it would really suck after all these upsets to see Gonzaga win it. After all that, you know what I mean? After all these little schools North Texas, we keep dogging on them, but North Texas is going to make it. North Texas made it to the 2nd round, and Oral Roberts is making it to the Sweet 16. It'd really suck if this ended with a Gonzaga-Baylor national title.
Right. Yeah, my word for this is predicted.
Oh, no.
Because
He jinxed it.
Because I did. I brought it up. If you listened to last Monday's podcast, I said, I asked, and I said, who do you think your Cinderella would be? Who can go the farthest? And Ryan, I don't know who he chose, but I chose Loyola Chicago.
Who did I say?
I can't remember.
Did I really say the homies at Colgate? I don't think I said that.
No, I don't think so.
Did I possibly go Winthrop?
I think you did. We'd have to review the tape, but we don't have time for that.
All right, we're not reviewing tape.
But I predicted that I could see Loyola Chicago upsetting Illinois in the second round and making a run possibly to get to the Elite Eight or maybe the Final Four. So next time, I'm going to keep my big mouth closed when we're picking a bracket.
Especially on our favorite team!
Exactly, because I did like Illinois. And obviously it was shown that they blew it and they couldn't handle the pressure. I mean, I watched that whole game. I was just
stunned.
I mean, when I watched that game, okay, we talked so much about Kofi Coburn and his defense and with using his size, utilizing that.
Yeah.
But what the Ramblers had was a mismatch there with Krutwig.
Yep.
He could pull it outside. He was faster than Kofi, and he was able to work in the
I don't
post
think
better.
anyone in the United States, maybe a couple of Loyola Chicago fans, maybe
Right.
Sister Jean,
Right.
I don't think anybody knew that guy existed or could stop Kofi. He was the Kofi stopper a team had to have, and it just happened to be on Loyola Chicago.
And I believe he was he was a freshman when they went to the Final Four. In 2018.
Do you agree with me, though? I think people are really excited to see Loyola Chicago, but I don't think they're everyone's favorite as they were.
No,
I think that's really that energy is really shifted towards Oral Roberts.
Right.
And granted, we live in the state of Ohio, so people are going to be more high on Oral Roberts because it's the team that beat Ohio State.
Right. They're trying to give props to Ohio State.
Well, and it just kind of everybody naturally wants to see the team that beat them either get the tar beaten out of them or win the whole dang thing.
Right.
So
it always makes you look better.
And to me, we can talk later about teams that look good right now that I think are Final Four ready. I'm just going to give you a hint. I'm really high on Syracuse right now.
Yeah, well, here's the problem with Syracuse. Every year they shouldn't even be in it. Then they get in, and then they rip off
Boeheim
2 or 3
coaches
games.
his butt off
and it's
out
ridiculous.
there. It's crazy.
If he didn't have Buddy Boeheim, his son, on that team, they would not be able to stay afloat in this tournament because he is
Buckets.
He is just put. Yeah.
Well,
new
here's
Buddy
my
Buckets
thing. You
from Buddy Field. But
and I, neither of us were high on Houston.
No.
And they're playing Syracuse.
Right.
This weekend.
And we thought Rutgers should have. A little tangent here. Rutgers should have won.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, there have been so many games close. We're looking at the bracket right now. But West Virginia should have beat Syracuse. Rutgers should have beat Houston.
Also, I called the OU win out of all my
You
crazy.
did call the OU
I
win.
called like 55 different crazy upsets.
Right.
But my OU won. I said I wanted them over Virginia, and Jason Preston pulled it out.
Right.
They're playing Creighton as we speak.
I know. Yes, they are. They're down 15, I believe. Still, they should be at post half. I'd have to actually check, but I think Texas Tech, they had a chance to beat Arkansas.
I wish.
I mean, there have been a lot of good games to tune into, which has been nice.
Even the Wisconsin Baylor game was close most of the game.
Right.
And the Loyola Illinois game was close the whole way, pretty much.
It was definitely tight. It was in that 5 to 10 point window until they finally got it extended with free throws at the end. But I'm not gonna mention anything next year when it's time to predict picks and try to blow my mouth off against my champion.
You can call Cinderella, just better not be in my boys at Illinois. And Io DeSumo will be leaving college basketball now. He's going to the NBA.
He's already announced?
Yeah, and I think they're going to retire his jersey.
I
love you, Io. Thank you.
He was, to say the least, he was disappointing. He was lackluster leadership.
He was.
Because he only scored, I believe, 9 points if I had
It was 9 or like 12.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up real briefly here.
Well, what I was going to say while he's pulling that up is that I'm really glad Kofi and Andre Curbelo are staying because I think with them, I think they can still have an amazing team next year.
Yeah. DeSumo had 9 points, 4 of 10 from the field. So it was very disappointing. I thought he put his team more on his back. I thought, by the way, I should change that correction. Creighton is now up 21.
Oh.
LSU is up 8 currently on Michigan. Anyway, sidetracked. But I thought it was a very disappointing performance. I thought he should have been the ones that Illinois were leaning on for that game, and they didn't. Obviously, Kofi scored 21, but at a time where the backs were against the wall and they needed 3-point goals, they didn't go to him, and they kept going to Coburn, which is okay. But anyway, we're gonna move on. Speaking of Cinderellas, we're segueing into a toss-up. Who's your bigger Cinderella, Ryan? Oregon State, who you were very high on, or the surprise Oral Roberts?
If I had to put money on which team goes the farthest, oh man, I like Oral Roberts. I think they have that nice magic to them where it's like they might not be the best team. They're definitely not the best team, but they've just got that magic with them that there's like, why not us type mentality. But if I had to put money on it, looking at who they have to play, I think Oregon State's got a good route because they've got the winner of Syracuse, Houston, the winner of Loyola, Chicago. Oh, they have to beat Loyola, Chicago. I don't know why I said it that way. They have to beat Loyola, Chicago, and then they have to beat the winner of the Syracuse-Houston game. I think they can win both those games. But to be honest, I think Syracuse, if you're counting them as a Cinderella, I really wouldn't because they're such a good program. But they were an 11. So I think Syracuse, Oregon State. I think that side of the bracket.
Anybody in the double digits. I think if you're a double-digit seed, you're still a Cinderella.
Okay.
No matter how.
Then I would
no
go.
matter how big your household name.
I would go Syracuse, Oregon State. To me, Oregon State could go to the national title. I think they look great lately. Whereas Syracuse, I think, loses in the Final Four. I don't think Buddy can carry them all the way. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think Buddy can keep it up.
I agree, and I think. We're gonna see. They're obviously they're gonna be playing on
Friday.
No, Saturday.
It's Saturday. Sunday.
It's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Everything's a day back this.
Oh yeah.
It's
So we'll be
Saturday,
recording right after. We'll be recording right after the Sweet 16, and we'll be on the first night of the Elite Eight.
Yes. So, yes. So it's gonna be that'll be entertainment right there. But I'm gonna pick Ryan's team with Oregon State.
Really, you switched?
Well,
before the broadcast, I felt like you were gonna say Loyola. I'm shocked.
What am I? No, we're not. We're not. We're choosing between Oregon State and Oral Roberts. So I'm picking.
Oh, okay. We're not counting Loyola because they're an 8.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
Right. Well, they're still a little bit of a Cinderella, but they're not as.
No, it's not. Yeah, no.
So, but I
You made fun of me for Oregon State. I just want to point that out.
I did because I did not trust Oregon State at all.
Old Hinkle.
And old Hink. Yeah. No, it's Tinkle.
Tinkle. Sorry. Tinkle.
Okay. Sorry if you don't know this. There's a former Cardington principal named Wayne Hinkle, and then their coach over there at Oregon State is Wayne Tinkle. So interchange them.
We're getting them confused.
In C-Town, but. I think Oregon State is definitely the better Cinderella at this point. I see them. They have a better chance to win, I would say, over the Ramblers. But it'll be interesting because that whole Midwest bracket has been shaken up.
By far the craziest bracket.
Yes, by far, because all their top seeds are out except Houston.
Who neither of us like Houston.
We did not trust either at all.
Speaking of not trusting, Iowa, we were right on that.
We were right, and we got screwed on that pick because VCU had a COVID test positive, so then they didn't get to play, even though we picked VCU.
Would have beat the tar out of them. Yes, I'm so angry.
Yes, so then we got 2 picks wrong there, just at a default, but that's a later story.
That sucks.
So I think my trust is in the Beavers for now.
I sent you a text. You were really laughing. You get the alert from the March Madness app. Everybody got this alert, and it's like, better turn in. The Oregon game, they're up 1-0, and I was like, oh, making jokes because the game was canceled, so they had to put it in as 1-0.
1-0.
And so it was really funny. I was like, man, NCAA didn't even think about it when they put that in because it's automated.
It's funny, but anyway, moving on because we're talking about top seeds and that Midwest bracket. Now with Illinois eliminated, is Gonzaga once again the consensus favorite there, Ryan?
I think I'm gonna go back to what I said before. I think from my logical perspective, I would say Gonzaga should be your favorite. If you're putting money on it, if we're in Vegas, if I'm sitting back and I had a gun to my head who I'm picking, I'm going to go logical Gonzaga, but after what I've seen this tournament, I wholeheartedly believe the winner is not going to be a 1 seed, something we didn't see coming. Right now, I think if I had to put money on it, the team that I think is playing the best basketball and has a really great chance, I think they got all the keys to it, and they have a good path, are Kansas. I think Kansas, because if we look, Kansas has to play USC tonight. That's going to be an easy game. They have to play Oregon. That will be an easy game, hopefully for them. Then they play Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. If they beat Gonzaga, which I think they can, they got McCormick's hitting for them. Big man. I don't know if you watched Kansas game. I told you I was really high on them. But I think them and Alabama, I think, are the two best picks. Just from, like, I feel like Gonzaga's not going to get it done because this tournament's been so crazy. I'm like, the undefeated team that everyone put their money on before, it just doesn't even feel right. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Kansas. I think Bama's a good shot because they're a favorite, but they weren't so much of a favorite. But I also think Florida State's underrated. But if you want to go, to me, there's 4 real options. I think Oregon State is the Cinderella win. Florida State is the underrated win. Alabama's kind of expected but unexpected. And then Kansas is that makes sense. Gonzaga is the most probable, yet at the same time, I feel like it's improbable just because everything's been so nuts. And I also would like to say really quick that Villanova, never bet against them because they've one of the best programs of the last 10 years.
Right, yeah.
Because as my girlfriend's little brother told me, well, Villanova's always good. And I was like,
you mean
Villanova, buddy. And he's like, oh, yeah, they're good. I'm like, you know what, you're right, because he doesn't watch college basketball. He just likes NBA.
Right.
And he's like, well, Villanova's always good. And I'm like, yes, you mean Villanova. And he's like, well, yeah, they're good. And I'm like, you're right, they are good. They broke my bracket immediately with Winthrop.
Right. I agree. Yeah, I totally did this, and you people think I'm crazy, on both sides, in the West and the South. In the West, in my bracket, I took UCSB, and they should have beaten Creighton. I had them going to the Sweet 16 because I didn't trust Virginia.
You know I like Creighton.
I know you do. And then on the other side did the same thing with Winthrop. I took both 12 seeds to try and get to the Sweet 16, and obviously I was wrong. So, but, yeah, I think Gonzaga's, again, the consensus favorite right now. It's hard. They have a 3-prong attack. They got Suggs. They got Timmy.
Suggs
and
is
they
so
got
good.
Chris Burke. It's hard to argue against that offensive attack there. They like to play fast. Obviously, they're high offensively. In their first game, they scored 98 points. Here in the second round earlier today, they scored 87. If you don't have a defense that can stop them, or you can slow the pace down tremendously, I don't think you're keeping up with the Zags. So, they are the consensus favorite. Obviously, they can slip up any time. They have it looks like an easier path, but, like we said earlier, it's March, so we don't know what's going to happen the next couple weeks to round out this big tournament. But, again, we're going back to playing our favorite What's the Word game. And,
I do enjoy this game, not going to lie.
Whoa.
It's pretty fun.
The Big Ten's performance in the NCAA tournament is blank.
I'm going to go with... Be honest, I think it's going to be 2 words. Not 3 words.
We hyphenate words here, so we make it all one.
All right, not hyphen, completely hyphen, shocking. That's mine. Where I think...
What was the big old...
I think it's one of those where it's...
You can't just give us a big,
Not completely shocking, is what I'm going to say.
Not completely shocking.
That's what I'm saying.
It's all hyphenated. Okay.
Not completely shocking.
Okay.
Because we've seen it a million times. It's March, and this year's been especially crazy, and that's not the Big Ten's fault. That's the rankings' fault. I think Ohio State was overrated by us and by everyone. I think Purdue was too high, too.
Yeah, the South bracket was awful to pick from.
Oh, yeah. And all the times you and I thought people were going to get upset, they didn't. And all the times people didn't get upset, they did. We flipped it.
Right.
And really our only right pick was Baylor.
Well, yeah, we got Gonzaga right, too. For now.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about the South.
Well, yes. In the South, we got Baylor correct. No, we picked Wisconsin.
We picked
got that right.
Yeah, okay, we picked Wisconsin.
Yep,
but Wisconsin was kind of a consensus favorite against
We were wrong on the next 2. I forced you into the Mormons and Utah State. Got Arkansas. We took Arkansas all the way to the Sweet 16, so we were good there. We took VA Tech here. In my other bracket, I took Florida. So I don't know why I switched, but I just had this feeling. Obviously, we took Ohio State. I was iffy on Ohio State, and I was, when we fit out the bracket
Cursed them
last
again.
week, and then guess what? They flunked, and I said, you know what? I knew we should have put Arkansas in the Sweet 16, but Ryan talked me into the Big Ten's gonna have at least 2 teams in the Final Four. And
yeah.
that hype just surely sailed. But
That's my word, though. It's not completely
Yeah.
shocking because we've seen it a million times. We've seen it in the past where the ACC had 3 out of the 4 number 1 seeds and not a single ACC team's in the Final Four.
right, yes,
Like, it happens every year.
Wasn't that 2 years ago or something like that?
I think it was 2 or 3 years ago.
ago,
I mean,
yeah.
well, I can tell you what it was 2 years ago. Final Four was Texas Tech, Michigan State, Virginia, and
At one team that I don't know.
Auburn.
Auburn, yes.
Auburn's SEC,
Yes, SEC.
Virginia's ACC, right?
Yep, and then we had
Big Ten is Michigan State,
right, and Texas Tech's the Big 12.
Big 12.
Yeah.
So all
We
power
represented-
conferences,
Except for one, the Conference of Champions, supposedly Pac-12.
they're Power 5.
I know, but they didn't.
Oh,
get
yeah, well,
represented. That's
there's
what
only
I'm
4
saying.
teams, so-
Right, and they're coined the Conference.
Oddly enough, the
Champions,
Pac-12
so
has been the best.
That's exactly
And watch out for
right.
UCLA. UCLA's playing great.
Yeah, I don't know where UCLA came out of because, obviously I'm a Sparty fan, and I thought Sparty should have won that game. They actually should have because they were up by 14 at one point. It was ridiculous. Izzo was frustrated. Obviously, nobody wanted to make baskets or play defense, and we're going on to the next season and East Lansing. But my word here is underwhelming because the Big Ten was the media's favorite. It was the most talked about conference, and they have lost out most of their teams. I mean, they have Michigan left. They got Maryland tonight against Bama. Obviously, we chose Bama over them. But it's definitely been underwhelming for the Big Ten after what they were talked up to be the best conference in the NCAA this past season.
And it's starting to look like tournament-wise, the Pac-12 is the strongest.
Right, which is
Not true. Usually,
Right, it's
Pac-12
an
is always the weakest in
Yes,
both
it's-
and both of the major sports, basketball and football.
Right.
Pac-12 has been
right.
historically in the last 10 years the weakest.
Right, and it's an inverse. It's an inverse of what people thought. So I think it's definitely been, like we say, it's March. It's an interesting tournament to say the least.
I will say Michigan feels like a complete afterthought. We've barely even talked about them on the podcast, and I think
Right.
their LSU game tonight's greatly important. It's going on right now.
Right.
Would you check the score?
I'm checking the score.
I think Michigan, if there's a 1 seed that I don't think Baylor's winning it.
Right.
I don't think.
LSU is up 2 right now with at the under 4 timeout in the first half.
So I think LSU could potentially beat them. You and I talked about that earlier.
Right.
But I do
And
think
we
Michigan's one of
did
those
pick
teams.
we did pick the Wolverines to get upset by the Seminoles of
Yep.
Florida State in the Sweet 16, so it wouldn't be that big of a drastic hit if they lose tonight.
Michigan, to me, is one of those teams. I could see them winning the whole dang thing, or I could see them losing tonight.
Yeah.
They're just weird that way.
Right.
Whereas
It's
I
one
feel
or the
like
other. There's no middle. There's no middle.
no,
with them.
and Baylor I think is a middle to me, where it's like I feel like Baylor's a Sweet 16 or Final Four loss. They're in between one of those.
Right.
And Gonzaga, I think they're winning it all, or they're losing in the Final Four or Elite Eight.
Yep.
They've got to make it past Sweet 16. They're too
Right.
good to not.
They have to. Yes, I agree.
Unless
I agree.
Jason Preston just performance of the century.
Well, I mean,
It might be
hold
Creighton,
on.
though. It might be
Hold
Creighton.
on. Yeah, let's just hold the horses.
I'm
there.
fine if it being Creighton because that was my
Creighton's
bracket.
up 15 for
That-
now.
I'm fine with that, 'cause that was my
Before
bracket.
Before the under 8 timeout in the second half.
You
so.
need to stop hating on Creighton. They're good.
Well, they were in turmoil there with their coach being suspended over some allegations of making racist comments indirectly towards his players, and there was some turmoil there. They got destroyed by the Hoyas,
That's
and that's
true.
where I thought they're totally going in a tailspin. It's like kind of how we had our rationale for Villanova. They had Gillespie go down.
Yep.
They had a disappointing exit out of the Big East tournament, and the next thing you know, they're in the Sweet 16. Jay
Freaking
Wright.
Georgetown.
Yeah.
Georgetown screwed everybody over with their
Yes,
brackets.
Yes. So, but yes. Speaking of Villanova, I mean, we're rolling right into that. Has Villanova impressed you so far without Colin Gillespie?
Completely. Completely. Villanova is just. I need to just stop betting against them. I said that the other day to my. I think I said that to my mother. I was just like, I can't bet against Villanova. They're too well coached, and they always just find a way. I mean, ever since 2016 with Chris Jenkins, it's just like they've always been a tournament team. I think in the last 5 years, if you're talking about a program I want to see in the tournament, doesn't matter what players they have, I want Villanova. Mm-hmm. They always get it done.
Yep.
I mean, I think Kansas has an argument to be the other one right there. Kansas, probably the last 15 years, Kansas has been consistent.
Last 30, they've been in the tournament, so obviously
they're very good. I think Kansas, consistency-wise, I think North Carolina has higher highs but lower lows. Mm-hmm. But I think Kansas is almost always an Elite 8 or Sweet 16 level team. That's always their floor.
Right.
Whereas North Carolina has lost relatively...
Well, this is the first time they've ever lost in the first round, ever, in North Carolina.
Yeah, but I'm saying North Carolina has lost games they should have won, I think, more often than Kansas.
Yeah.
I trust Kansas a lot more.
Yeah.
So Kansas and Villanova are kind of those two where it's just like, they're gamers. They're built for the tournament.
Yeah.
And Michigan State's another one of those. Michigan State's another one of those. Except not this year.
This didn't have the talent this year. I don't know what happened. We had an undefeated season going in the beginning, beat Duke, and then next thing you know, we had that COVID pause and had a tailspin, got those 3 top 5 wins just to get in the tournament. So, lucky enough to say that. I have been impressed by Villanova. I turned into that Winthrop game, and I was frustrated because I picked Winthrop thinking Nova would just be tailspin out. Just when I was frustrated watching the Creighton UCSB game, and I thought, what is Creighton doing? UCSB had a I don't know I can't remember how big the lead was, but they had a lead at the end. The next thing you know, Creighton hits a 3, and UCSB can't even get a good shot to end the game. So, but anyway, back to Villanova. He impressed me. I think this is the one thing that comes out here is Jay Wright's a hell of a coach, and he's that program has definitely been on the uptick the last few seasons, and he's been building that program for a long time, and out of Philadelphia. So I think they've been interesting to watch, to say the least. Anyway, we're gonna move back to the NCAA women's tournament, but it was a toss-up from last night. They played back-to-back. Who was more impressive in their opening tournament win? Connecticut or Stanford?
Connecticut. I don't think you're going to disagree with me here, are you?
Are
you really?
I actually am saying that neither. First, because it was both easy pass for both.
UConn blew them out of the water.
UConn played High Point, and I was informed by my grandpa, Jimmy, that's in North Carolina, because I didn't know where that was.
Yeah.
And then Stanford played Utah Valley. Now, both teams won by the same amount, 43 points, actually, but UConn put more points on the board, 102, compared to the Cardinal at 87. I would say UConn is more impressive because they have no Gino Auriemma there. Obviously, Tara Vanderveer of the Cardinal, she has the most career wins for a women's basketball coach in college. But I can say this, that UConn did not have much of a drop-off from Gino to Chris Daly, his associate head coach. She's been with him 30-plus seasons. She's also the first assistant coach to be a Hall of Famer as well.
Really?
First and only at the moment. So I thought I will give the edge to UConn there. But Paige Becker, she had a very good all-around game. She played 36 minutes. She was 9 of 13 from the floor, 1 of 2 from downtown. She has scored 24 points, had 9 boards and 6 assists. Very good overall
Almost
game.
a double-double.
Almost a double-double. So I thought Paige Becker's played well. Stanford, their star in Kiana Williams, she was 7 of 12 from the floor. She scored 20. She was 6-11 from downtown. She broke the career 3-point goals made record at the Cardinal with her 295th one, I believe, in the first quarter. So
who was more impressive?
I thought it was more impressive. I think that record's more impressive, but I will take UConn on the win for now. So they will play in the Sweet 16 very late Tuesday night for me at 9 p.m.
I like Rutgers if I was going to go with an upset team.
Where?
For women's? Yeah.
Yes, C. Vivian Stringer. What's so crazy about the women, about women's basketball too, is that they have more coaches that have been more successful in their careers. They have more coaches that have reached the 1,000 win mark.
I think it's that powerhouse thing, though.
Right.
It's like we talk about. There's a lot more powerhouse.
I think there's loyalty there, too, where in the men's, you always see some of the top coaches trying to see where the grass is greener and they're flip-flopping and all that.
Yeah.
And you don't see that loyalty in the men's compared to the women's, where, like, sees Vivian Stringer, she's been at Rutgers for a long time, I think over 20 years, those kinds of things. Sylvia Hatcher was also at North Carolina. those kinds of things. I mean, it's
Part of the
it's kind
reason you get
amazing.
into those powerhouse situations is because there's, as we talked last week, there's a real.
Most women's teams stay for 4 years. There's a real thing with women's basketball where there's a lot more of a tendency to stay all 4 years, which leads to more powerhouse teams, which leads to more career wins, which leads to more dominant programs.
Yeah, I mean, if we look, Pat Summitt spent her whole career at Tennessee. Gino Auriemma has been there all at UConn his whole most of it. I believe all of his career.
Well, just like the players, the coaches stay at the same place a while, which leads to a lot more wins.
Right. And
When they're not constantly leaving for the NBA,
Right.
there's more winning going on.
right, and multiple ones like we mentioned: Tara Vanderveer, Gino Auriemma, C. Vivian Stringer, Sylvia Hatchell, Muffet McGraw. She was close to 1,000, but there have just been more career wins for those coaches. But that's a little off subject there, what we're talking about. But I think UConn was more impressive compared to Stanford. It'll be interesting to see. That's my pick. That's my pick for the championship game, Connecticut-Stanford. I took Connecticut 66-62 for the win for Gino's 12th NCAA tournament championship. So
That'd be crazy. My gosh.
yes, it's the John. He's the John Wooden of women's basketball, and it's amazing. So
Yeah, they're like video game level successful. It's
Right.
crazy.
right, I mean, when you get number one recruits a lot,
Yeah.
it helps out.
Well, it's like I was just telling my grandpa. It's like they got Paige Beckers, and now they're going to get the new number one. Then they're going to get the next number one. Like, it takes until some number one goes, I'm going to Louisville.
Right.
Like, it takes that.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
And if I was the number one recruit, I go to UConn. I'm going to win.
Right, UConn's great. Yes. I mean, well, we should not discourage that there aren't any other winning programs, but UConn overall, as that
It's the best program.
I mean, you compare that. I mean, if Tennessee would have had that consistency, that's one of those things that obviously it was sad to see Pat Summitt have that diagnosis of Alzheimer's and have to leave her coaching post at Tennessee. But the Tennessee Volunteers, they could not sustain their success, especially postseason success, after that transition. Now they finally they have a coach in there that actually is doing that, bringing their program back up, and that'll be good because NCAA women's basketball is only good enough as the rivalry between Connecticut and Tennessee, as Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma did not care for each other at all. So
it drives it.
yes, love them or hate them games. Everybody likes them.
Duke,
So-
North Carolina always
Right.
sells out. Michigan, Ohio State always sells out.
Right. Yes.
Auburn, Bama.
Right.
They're great rivalries
Right,
are what
the
makes
biggest-
every sport.
Exactly. They're make or break.
I mean, Celtics Lakers finals is the biggest money.
Right. 80s, definitely. Late 2000s. Can't skim over those two.
And
But-
1960s.
Yes.
And kind of 70s. There's a couple.
Yeah. Yes.
A lot of matchups.
We'll talk about that a little later on about something that's very melancholy.
Yes.
But anyway, moving on a little bit to the NFL. The Patriots have been very active in free agency. Do you think that massive spending by New England is going to lead to more wins this year?
I think Cam is a, what would the word be? It's definitely not smoke show. Smoke and mirrors. Smoke show. He's not good. He's not that good. He's smoke and mirrors. He's not the legit quarterback. I thought about this all week.
Right.
With the moves they made, they're not building a Cam Newton offense. They're building...
I disagree.
What?
And this is why I'm disagreeing with this, because it looks like they're going back to a two tight end offense, run heavy.
Yeah.
And that's where Cam Newton is right now.
But you don't sign Hunter Henry to sit on your line.
But he's a good blocking tight end.
He is.
That's what you need.
He is, but
you
that's...
need, but how
That's like having Gary Oldman. That's like having Gary Oldman be in a sitcom, dude. You're really demeaning his talents. You're gonna put Gary Oldman in 2.5 Men.
But this is how it is, okay? This is how it goes. When he had Gronkowski and Hernandez.
Yeah.
With that, basically what they did is they ran heavy, had play action sometimes, and they threw on third down. And they were there, they were reliable, and they had breakout seasons. That's why I just disagree that Hunter Henry won't be utilized. I'm not saying he won't be.
You don't like my Gary Oldman comparison? I don't think he's Gary Oldman level, but you know what I mean.
No, he's not Gary Oldman.
No, he's not even a top 5 tight end.
No.
He's probably top 10.
Who? Hunter Henry?
Yeah.
No, he's a top 5.
You think he's top 5?
Yeah,
What would it be?
I think.
Gronk,
No,
Kelsey.
I'm not giving Gronk number 1.
No, I'm just naming 5.
Okay. Yeah,
Kelsey Gronk.
Kelsey, Hunter Henry.
Third?
I can't even name anybody else.
That's not true. There's another one that's good.
Who?
Mark Andrews.
Okay, he's decent.
And then
I don't say he's top 5.
there's one more. He's coming in.
Njoku.
No,
No,
definitely
Jono Smith from Tennessee. It's Jonnu Smith, yes.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Johnny
I guess
Smith.
Hunter Henry might be the third best tight end in the app. No, Zach Ertz. Is Zach Ertz better than?
Well, I that's, you know what? That's a very good
question.
That's a very good question. That's not what I wanted.
Well, I think Zach Ertz is going to Indianapolis.
Well, I think so too. They're going to trade him.
Did you see
Obviously-
Prince Harry in the number 2 jersey?
Yes, I did.
I thought he looked nice in the Colt blue.
Well, I think
Colts next great quarterback?
no.
I know you're not big on the
I
Wentz
know.
wagon.
He's going to need help from JT from the backfield.
Well, no. Well, here's my thing though. I think you would agree. Colts had a really good team this year. They could do it again next year. I think they're an underrated pick for.
Oh, I agree. They're underrated. underrated. Frank Wright is a good coach.
Oh, he's
a
so good.
leader.
I love him. Yeah, he's great.
But talking about Zach Ertz real quick, they think there's a possible trade here from him sending him from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. I can see the Patriots being again another 10-win team possible. We're gonna have 17 games most likely for the season, so 10-7 is not out
I
of
think
reach.
the Patriots will be one of the most interesting teams. I know you're saying Cam's legit, but I wholeheartedly believe they're getting Grop or they're drafting. I think Cam is the backup plan. I think he is currently the number 2 option, and maybe he is the starter at the start of the season, but once a Mac Jones or a Trey Lance comes along, he takes over and is the future of the franchise. They're not betting on Cam.
Well, I think Cam is another. He's the quarterback of now. I think that's what he's going to be for this season again.
Okay, I can see that. I could see that, but I still think you go get Kyle Trask if you like him. You go get somebody. I don't even know who'd be a quarterback possible next year. Because Spencer Rattler, is going to be a sophomore next year. That guy that's really good for Clemson is going to be a sophomore next year. The one with the name I can't pronounce. So.
Well, I can't remember his name anyway, so I just know he came in and played for that one game for Trevor Lawrence, and he had to lead a comeback against BC. So
Yep.
that's how that is. But anyway, we're playing What's the Word again here. Juju Smith-Schuster's return to the Pittsburgh Steelers makes him blank.
Makes him, I'm going to go with right now, I'm going to say, well, I know what you're going to say, and I'm not going to go
Because
that.
it's on my paper, folks.
Yeah, I'm going to go with it makes him coming back to the Steelers makes him a goner. Like, he's leaving after this year. I think he's gone.
Now my word here is loyal, because I see it differently. I see he was willing to take the pay cut, team-friendly deal.
I agree.
And what
It's a good move by him.
What they're going to do is they're going to tear up that contract next year and sign him to a long-term 4-year deal.
Depending how he plays. It's a
Depending
contingency.
how he plays.
I think it's a
But
contingency.
I think, obviously, there's a lot of contingencies here because there's a new OC in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
You're going to see how he's used instead. He was more of a deep threat. Obviously, you had Antonio Brown he was opposite of, but he was more of a deep threat earlier in his career. Then he changed to be in the slot, so I'll be interested to see if he evolves in his role again.
Well, I think the Steelers are just trying to make that one last Big Ben run, and if it doesn't happen this year,
Possibly another year or two. We don't.
I think it's this year. I think that's what they're
Depends
moving
the
towards.
statistics. Depends on the statistics from some of the media, but who knows?
I think this is the year they're going for it, and if it doesn't pan out and Ben says I'm done, and Juju didn't perform to the level they want, they say, we're cutting you
Right,
loose.
you get rid of him. Yeah, you don't need the cap.
They say hello, he says hello Vegas, or he says hello. I don't think he'd be able to get to Kansas City. I don't think.
Well, they wanted him as a third option, and obviously, why would you want to take that? Even though
No,
they were gonna
Pringle's
pay him-
good.
They were going to pay him.
Yeah.
They were going to pay him $11 million, but they wanted him in the slot to probably be the third or fourth option. And I don't think even though getting paid that money, he wanted to still be number 1 or number 2.
I think he does.
So,
I mean, maybe if Deshaun Watson gets in Carolina, he can come over.
well, I hope not. I hope he stays in Pittsburgh, but Anyway, moving on to a brief NBA topic. Last night, LeBron James suffered a high ankle sprain, and does LeBron James' injury derail the Lakers' path to back-to-back championships here, Ryan?
Definitely it hurts his case for MVP. Everyone who listens to the regular Sort of Sports podcast with me alone knows that I love to talk about the NBA MVP because I want it to be Joel Embiid so badly. And Embiid is currently out, and LeBron is currently out. And whenever I do a new episode of the regular podcast, I'm not sure if I'm doing one next week. I think I'm doing one soon. Right now, I'm kind of focused on this one because we're really doing a lot here because it's March Madness, and this is kind of our big, I don't want to say, I don't know what the word would be. It's kind of our big grand opening of this show, so that's why we're going really heavy right now with this show. But LeBron and Embiid, the two frontrunners for MVP, are out. I think that's definitely hurting them. I hope Embiid can get back very soon so he can show everybody that he is the MVP of this season. He's still my MVP, but Curry's looking really good right now. Jokic, if he can get the Nuggets to a top 4 seed, he can win them MVP. But I'm getting off the question you asked me, and that is Chris Paul looks good for the Suns. Does this derail Lakers' path back-to-back championships? If it wasn't LeBron James or a select other few players, I would say yes. But coming from a guy who loved him at Cleveland and now really doesn't like him for the Lakers and hates the Lakers and their organization, I know not to bet against them. And he's also got one of the 7 best players in the NBA in Anthony Davis. So he's good, and I just don't know what else to say other than that. Like, they could be the 4 seed, but it's LeBron. Ever since 2018, I always remember that. 2018 Cavs was an awful team without LeBron. They're one of the 3 worst teams in the NBA that year. With him, they make it to the NBA Finals because he just said, we're getting there. He got them to the 4th seed in the East, carried them to the Finals. We ended up getting swept because J.R. Smith couldn't shoot the ball with time running out.
The series that he forgot about the
Yeah, that was the J.R. Smith weed game. I'm kidding. He probably wasn't legit high that time, but he's known for doing that. So
I don't know about those rumors because I'm not sticking around the NBA too much. But
I know, but I'm saying I do think it hurts because there's a lot of good teams this year. I think this NBA season is going to go down as one of the most interesting ever. There's so many good teams, so many great players, so many cool things happening at once. And when you're looking at teams like the Nets and the Sixers might make a move here that makes them even more of a powerhouse, it definitely looks scary, but I think it's LeBron James. You can't bet against him. So I'm going to go no. I don't think it affects too much.
I'm going to be on the opposite side of the coin here and say yes, it affects him much because not only is LeBron facing an injury, also Anthony Davis is still recovering from that injury.
That's true. That's true.
So that's where I see you can't have both your 2 players injured. And I was already on the fence saying that I thought they could make the finals without AD being at full strength. And now with LeBron not going to be at full strength, because those high ankle sprains are usually worse than having an ankle break. So
that's true.
I just don't see it happening. And I'd say right now, are you willing to put the money on the field? Okay, Lakers against the whole field. I'll take the field.
I'll take the field.
No, I'm taking the field. You can't take both.
But I don't want the Lakers. I'm saying this.
You're the one that talked them up.
I'm talking them up. This is what I'm saying. I am saying this. I think this is hurts LeBron more long term. Maybe this shows that Father's time is slowly catching up to him faster than we thought.
Hopefully that's okay with me because I don't want him breaking Kareem's career scoring record. So if it happens, it happens. Retiring happens early, that's okay with me.
I just don't. I'm terrified of the idea that we get to the playoffs and he's not at full health and Davis isn't at full health and they lose because they're not at full health and the Bucks win the title or the Sixers win the title or the Nets win the title. And the immediate plot line is, oh, well, because the media's really riding LeBron heavy ever since he came to L.A. And it's oh, well, they wouldn't have won that if LeBron wasn't injured. And you get the Hakeem Olajuwon 1994 title. Well, Jordan's not even in the NBA at that time because everybody wants to forget the fact that Jordan was in the NBA in 1995. He just wasn't back at full. He was wearing number 45. He wasn't back to completely normal yet because he had just come back from baseball.
Right.
And that's why they lost to the Magic. He wasn't at full strength yet. But I'm saying, yeah, I talk about Michael Jordan like he's some superhero. He wasn't at full. He wasn't fully recharged. But
it wasn't in basketball. Shit.
Yes,
Let's say
he wasn't in peak Michael Jordan form like he is in '96, where he goes 82 and 0, 72 and 10.
Yeah. Nobody's doing 82.
No one's going 82 and 0. That's never. Yeah, that's crazy. That's the video game right there. That's the video game success.
Yes.
That the UConn gets. I'm saying it's more 3
longest streaks ever.
It's crazy. They're crazy.
Pretty sure it was 110 games for the longest streak. But anyway, back to Ryan.
I think if I would much rather take the field, but I'm saying their chances going in, I felt like they were the front runner for the title, and the Nets, probably then the Nets, and then I think you'd have to go Sixers. Suns have really moved up, And
I
and
like
then
Chris Paul's leadership.
I think they're
like
great. They're wonderful.
Don't
and then
sleep on the Jazz, please.
Jazz were fifth.
I'm gonna fight.
Jazz were
I'm
fifth.
fighting for the Jazz.
I know Jazz
I'm
were
fighting for
fifth.
the
Jazz were fifth, and then probably Clippers/Bucks for sixth spot, because people know how good Giannis is at basketball. Yet they've never seen a lot of postseason success. And coming from a Giannis favorite player of all time of any sport, I personally agree we haven't seen a lot of postseason success. But I also think that it's the Virginia 2018 effect, where 2019 Virginia. No, yeah, it was 2019 Virginia.
No,
the Virginia
no.
2019. It was 2019 that won the title.
Right.
So I'm saying it's the Virginia
So you're
2019
saying
effect, where because
2018 was
everybody,
last year.
yes,
Uh-huh.
I'm saying Virginia 2019 effect, where you're so peed off from what's happened before that you just say, screw it, we're going to win the whole dang
Right,
thing.
right,
so
right,
I think
right,
Giannis kind of has that mentality where people are doubting him so much, I could see him just going off.
Right.
So I think, in general, if you asked me at the beginning of the season, Lakers or Field, I would take Field.
Okay.
You asked me 3 months ago, I would take Field. You ask me now, I would still take Field.
Okay.
I don't think this is be-all, end-all. Lakers aren't winning it. I think it hurts. I agree with the question, does it? It looks scarier, but as an NBA fan, as a huge NBA fan, what becomes really important to me is narratives and how things are viewed more than what actually happens, because it's generally in sports, it's what's more important, is what's the story people tell more than what actually happened, because that's how that happens. And if the story becomes, well, LeBron should have 6 rings, or like he wins another one eventually, and then they're like, well, LeBron's, if he didn't get injured that time, well, then we get into a real issue. And so I'm saying we kind of have that with the 2015 finals, where people are like, oh, well, Kevin and Kyrie get injured. So I'm getting on my big narrative tangent, but I'm saying I really hope it's not that way, and that he's back, and they play to their full potential, and they don't win the title. That is my hope.
All right.
As somebody who wants to see everything go perfectly, but it might not.
Right. Well, we will see what happens with the rest of the NBA season. But now, it's a time for a word from our disclaimer. The following segment is not meant to copyright infringe on, pardon the interruption, the TV show or its segment Happy Time. No music or segment pieces have been violating this copyright measure. Now, back to Quinn and Ryan. Happy time, people. Happy 32nd birthday, J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt, who attended Wisconsin University for college football, was drafted by the Houston Texans in 2011. Since then, he's torn up the league and many backfields. He's won Defensive Player of the Year 3 times. He has the Houston Texan records for career sacks and forced fumbles. And lately was trending on free agency before he decided to sign with the Cardinals for the next 2 seasons. J.J. Watt has suffered from injuries the past couple of seasons where he has not been able to be at full strength or play a full season either. Like many high-profile leaves from the Houston Texans this free agency offseason, J.J. Watt also decided to seek employment elsewhere. Many rumors were that he was going to the Pittsburgh Steelers to be with his other 2 brothers, TJ and Derek, but instead he chose the Cardinals, another high contender in the NFC.
Well, I was really high on the Cardinals this year. I like Cliff Kingsbury. I like Kyler Murray a lot. I have him on my fantasy team. I have DeAndre Hopkins on my fantasy team, so I really want them to do well. And, I mean, I think it's a good choice by him. I think the Cardinals have a good young team. In 2 years, not this year, but next year, Super Bowl 57, the Super Bowl's in Arizona. Maybe we're going to see another hometown Super Bowl because I think Cardinals got something good cooking there, and if J.J. Watt can not age like rapidly, they're going to have a better defense and better running back situation, hopefully, and that can propel them to being a championship-level team.
Yes. Another happy birthday shout-out to Roger Bannister. He would have been 91 today, but the former Briton was the first person to run the mile under 4 minutes at 3 minutes 59 seconds, 59.4 seconds, excuse me. He was a British amateur athlete. He competed in the 1952 Helsinki Olympic Games, the 1954 British Empire Games. I didn't even know they had these, so I looked it up, and 2 European championships. He became a neurologist later in life after he passed on his amateur running career and was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II later on in his life. But as a former cross-country runner, I figured I'd have to throw that in there. I wrote an article about Roger Bannister back in junior high.
What? Really?
About breaking the sub-4 mile. Happy anniversary to the UCLA Bruins. On this day in 1969, they completed their three-peat of the NCAA men's basketball championships under legendary coach John Wooden. They beat Wooden's alma mater, Purdue, 92-72 at Freedom Hall in Louisville, Kentucky. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, known as Lou Alcindor, then won his third straight consecutive most outstanding player. I don't know why I said straight and consecutive. They mean the same thing. I said it twice. But he won his third consecutive most outstanding player of the Final Four tournament that year. And this went on for a big run by Wooden's teams of many back-to-back championships there in the late 60s and to mid-1970s.
We mentioned on this podcast, we mentioned on the last podcast, greatest college basketball coach of all time, no question. I don't really know what else has to be said. Like, he's great. UCLA was an amazing program then. I don't think they'll ever match that level of success. The only team that you could say has even come close lately in men's basketball.
We could argue Kentucky under Adolph Rupp. Can we argue that?
Yeah, I think there's a good argument. And the guy for Kansas,
Bill Self?
way back. No, not Bill Self. I like Bill Self, but it's way back.
How about Roy Williams?
No, I'm talking like 1950s coaching. Give me a moment, Quinn.
Dr. James Naismith.
It's not. I don't think it's. It's not Dr. James Naismith.
But
that was funny. Yeah,
Dr.
he was.
James Naismith was the first inaugural coach. If you didn't know that, but
Fog Allen.
yes, they're 37 years.
He was great for
Longer
them.
than that. I'm sorry, 39.
So he was a great coach. So, but I think level of success, Adolph Rupp, which making that West Texas win over them, all the more impressive.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes. So
my grandpa said the other day we were discussing that game. He's like, "Yeah, it felt like at the moment you were watching history, and you watched West Texas beat them." He's like, "You
Right.
could feel it in the moment." And I'm like,
Right.
"That's really interesting."
right.
So
Yep. And the melancholy trails to Elgin Baylor, who passed away today at age 86. He was a former NBA star for at first Minneapolis, then moved to Los Angeles Lakers from 1959 to 1972. He was the number 1 overall pick for the 1958 NBA draft and won Rookie of the Year in his inaugural season. He was a 10-time NBA first-teamer, 11-time NBA All-Star, and his popularity led to appearances on the ever-popular TV series Ronan Martin's Laugh-In in the 1960s. He won an NBA championship in his final season, where he played only 9 games, and that was in the regular season because of a nagging knee injury he had for the last 3 seasons of his career. In his post-NBA career, he had a brief coaching stint in New Orleans, and then he became the general manager for the Clippers for over 22 years and was named Executive of the Year in 2006 after the Clippers won their first playoff series in the NBA playoffs.
I was terribly upset when I heard the news today. I'm glad that he's 84. You get to live like
86.
86. Sorry, I messed up. Sorry. You just told me the year right here. I didn't remember. I'm glad he got. It's not like a man who died at like 65. He got to live a pretty full life, and he's one of those players that if you take him out of time, he can play really any era. He was supremely athletic. He was almost like overqualified to play when he did. Him and John Havlicek, to me, are two very underrated players because they were so supremely athletic and really ahead of their time for what they could do. And people don't give them enough respect for that because statistically they were on teams with monsters and gods like Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, who are products of their time. Whereas, Bill Russell, greatest defensive player of all time, which is borderline unarguable that he's not. The only person that really comes close in pop culture to be like that good defensively is Dennis Rodman. While I love me some Dennis Rodman, Bill Russell was a better defender. And when you're Havlicek, you're the second best player on that team, but Havlicek was supremely athletic, and Baylor was his yin to his yang on the Lakers. Baylor was kind of, to be honest, like if there was a 1960s Kevin Durant, that was him. He could spread the floor. He was incredibly fast. He was really everything you'd want in a basketball player. He could play anywhere. He's a great player, and because he was in that early NBA before 1984, really, isn't that big. The NBA boomed in 1984 because Magic and Bird's rivalry became incredibly mainstream. Michael Jordan was drafted along with Charles Barkley and John Stockton and Hakeem Olajuwon all in that 1984 draft. 4 guys who were incredibly marketable and popular, Stockton being the least, and Stockton's still an incredibly popular player. And so if you're really before the 80s, really the only guy people talk about are Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. And I think Havlicek and Baylor, to me, I like to group them together because they're very similar in that way where not enough people talk about how good he was. And he was just I don't know what else to say. Like, if you look up Elgin Baylor highlights, it's not really going to do it for you. He was fast. He could pass. He could spread the floor. He was really everything you'd want in a basketball player. I think that's really all I have to say. He's just an incredible basketball player and person. We've seen him be a great coach. There's good stories about him. Just a great human being and a great basketball player. Definitely a really underrated legend, in my opinion. So I said that as soon as you said that. I was like, I have a lot to say about Elgin because him and Havlicek are 2 guys that I get a little excited about because I feel like they're not discussed enough when we're talking about legends of the elder NBA years.
Right. All right. That's the end of the second episode for the Sort of Sports Big Salad Podcast. Be sure to join us hopefully next Monday as we talk about
the Sweet 16.
The Sweet 16 and hopefully a preview of the Elite 8. Good night.
And some women's basketball.
Yes.
Because
women's basketball and
we care about it.
We do. We truly do. So hopefully UConn's still in the tournament and Gino's off that COVID list. So thank you and good night.